Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the language you speak isn't just, a tool, but maybe it's more like the actual house you live in, your being? We kicked off this week's deep dive looking at sources, quoting the philosopher Heidegger. He had this famous line, "Language is the house of being."
It's a really profound idea when you unpack it. It's saying our words aren't just stickers we put on things. They're the actual stuff, the bricks, the wood, the roof that builds the space where we exist, where our identity lives. Our language literally shapes how we see the world. It carves out a home for us.
Yeah, that hit me immediately. I remember when I was learning English while still speaking Korean. It wasn't just learning new words. It honestly felt like I had two houses. And I was constantly moving between these two constructed realities. That experience makes it super clear. If words built this house for your being, then wow, they can also remodel it, strengthen it, or, do some serious damage.
And that brings us right to the heart of this deep dive. The sources frame it perfectly. Our use of language is like constant construction work, always building, whether we realize it or not. So we really need to look at the blueprints, don't we? What kind of construction are you actually doing? Are your words building up, strengthening things, or are they maybe tearing the whole structure down?
Because that's the simple, maybe inconvenient truth, isn't it? We operate with two kinds of speech, words that build and words that destroy. And to really get our heads around this paradox and what it means day to day, we're going to dive into an old story. It's about architecture, vulnerability, resilience, the story of Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem.
Oh, it's the perfect example. Really lays bare the irony of, how we talk. We have this amazing power, this gift of speech, and yet our sources point to that paradox in James. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing.
It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? This little muscle, the tongue, can create life or just ruin someone in a heartbeat. So the question isn't if we're building. We are, always. The real challenge is figuring out what we're building with our words.
Right. And to see the stakes, let's just paint the picture. We're talking 5th century BC.
Yeah.
Jerusalem, once is a great city. Now, it's basically rubble. Decades of conflict, neglect. And Nehemiah, he's a Jewish official, but he was serving way off in the Persian capital, Susa. Then he gets this absolutely devastating news.
And the destruction wasn't just physical buildings, it was deeper, existential. The walls, the big protective walls, were broken down, gates burned. For the people back then, walls weren't just stone. They meant safety, identity, hope. Without them, the city's exposed. And the people, they felt completely helpless, hopeless. Their collective house of being had basically crumbled.
Exactly. So when Nehemiah finally gets there, he's been appointed governor. He doesn't just start handing out tools. No. He starts by rebuilding how they see the situation. He starts with words. Words designed to lay a new foundation of hope.
Yeah. And these weren't just pep talks. They were specific, deliberate, vision-casting words, the sources call them. He starts by saying, look, I see the trouble we're in. He validates their pain first, doesn't brush it off. Then he gives the call. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. That shift from acknowledging the shared mess to proposing a shared mission, that's key.
And here's why those words landed so powerfully. It wasn't just a good plan. Nehemiah grounded his vision in something bigger, a God-shaped purpose for the community. And crucially, he wrapped it in his own story of grace. He didn't just command, he shared. He talked about the gracious hand of my God on me, what the king had done for him.
So he used his own experience, his testimony, not to show off, but to build belief. He showed them tangible proof that God was involved, that this impossible task was possible because of that divine support. And it just lifted their spirits, right? People who felt paralyzed by the sheer size of the job. And what was the result? They said, let us start rebuilding. Boom. That's the power of words that lift, unite, drive action. Okay, but bringing it closer to home, speaking words that build up, it can be way harder in one-on-one situations, especially when someone's really hurting. We want to help, but sometimes our well-meaning words just fail miserably.
Oh, they absolutely do. The sources really highlight this. Even the most common phrases, the ones we think are helpful, can feel so empty. Or worse, they can actually make the person feel like their pain isn't valid. We often try to shortcut the pain, explain it away.
That's interesting. Why does something like time heals all wounds, which, maybe feels true eventually, why does it fall so flat right then?
Because it dismisses the now. It puts grief on a schedule, basically telling the person to just wait. It completely bypasses what's needed most. Acknowledging the present heaviness, meeting them right there, in the thick of it.
Okay, so what can we say? What are some specific alternatives? Words that actually build up that foundation when someone's struggling, instead of accidentally weakening it.
Well, instead of time heals,
Mm-hmm.
try something focused on just being there, sharing the load. Like, this is so heavy, I'm here for you. See? That centers their immediate experience and offers support now, not some vague future promise.
Okay, that makes sense. What about that other one we hear all the time? Everything happens for a reason. That can feel really grating when things seem senseless.
Yeah, grating is a good word, because it tries to slap a neat explanation onto something maybe truly inexplicable or tragic. A much better way, a more validating way, is to admit you don't have the answers but offer presence.
Yeah.
Something like, I don't understand why this is happening, I don't have answers, but I'm here, I'll sit with you, I'll listen. That honors the confusion and pain, doesn't just paper over it with a platitude.
And the third one, the sources called out, God won't give you more than you can handle, which, they point out, isn't actually true sometimes.
Exactly. That's a big one. The source material is pretty blunt.
Yeah.
There are things too big to handle alone. That phrase often just adds shame to the burden. Instead, we need words that bring community, bring grace into that feeling of being overwhelmed. So maybe say, when this feels like too much, just know I'll help carry it with you.
Hmm.
That completely changes the frame. It's about shared load, about grace stepping in precisely when you are overwhelmed, when the walls feel like they're caving in.
And, connecting back to Nehemiah again, the sources really stress that after offering that support, that shared burden, when the time feels right, sharing your own story of being rebuilt by grace, that can be incredibly powerful. It's not boasting about your strength, it's boasting about what God did to fix the broken parts of your life.
That's the constructive work,
Hmm.
the building.
But, as Nehemiah found out pretty quickly, wherever you have words building something good, you're almost guaranteed to find words trying to tear it down, and people behind those words.
Right. Enter the opposition, Sanballat, governor of Samaria. His problem wasn't theology. It was pure politics, fear. If Nehemiah succeeded, if Jerusalem got strong again, that shifted the power balance. Sanballat's influence would shrink.
And his main weapon wasn't soldiers, not at first, it was his tongue. He launched this deliberate, nasty campaign of ridicule, all designed to crush the workers' morale, sabotage the project internally. And the sources captured just how vicious his words were. He went straight for their identity, called them feeble Jews, which meant like withered, miserable, pathetic, just tearing them down as people. Then he mocked their actual work. Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble burned as they are? Painting this picture of utter hopelessness.
And the final blow, the ultimate put down, trying to make their massive effort seem tiny, insignificant.
Yeah.
What they are building, even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones.
Yeah.
This wasn't constructive criticism. It was pure demolition, trying to take apart their confidence piece by piece, attacking their collective house of being.
That destructive power of ridicule. It's why the critic Thomas Carlyle called it the language of the devil. Its only goal is to diminish, demoralize, make someone feel small and worthless, collapse their spirit.
And we see this exact dynamic playing out all the time today, don't we?
Hmm?
The sources explicitly warn about the flood of toxic labels, the tagging, the dehumanizing language online and in public debates. When we boil people down, people with different politics or beliefs or lifestyles, to just a label, a libtard, a snowflake, a deplorable, whatever it is, we're using Sanballat's playbook.
And bringing it back to that house metaphor, using those labels, you're basically denying that person dignity. You're saying you don't get to live in the house of respect. You're damaging their ability to feel like a valued human.
And that has a spiritual cost, too. The source material is firm on this. We have to reject that cheap, misleading catharsis that comes from mockery. You simply don't build yourself up by tearing someone else down. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, so Nehemiah is facing this verbal assault, this calculated campaign. What does he do? He's got options, right? He could fire back with insults. He could call out the troops. He could just shut down, go silent. What path did he choose?
His very first move, prayer, not revenge, prayer. And it was a pretty direct prayer, too. Hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. He handed the judgment, the fight, over to God. And that act seemed to release him from the personal anger, the need to retaliate in kind.
But critically, he don't just pray. That wasn't the end of it. He followed that prayer, that listening for guidance, with really wise, practical action. Action that protected the work. He posted guards, day and night, the text says, meeting the threat, keeping the project going, despite the psychological warfare.
Yeah, Nehemiah set this pattern. Pray first, listen, then act wisely, using words and actions that build, not destroy. He refused to play Sambalat's game, refused to answer mockery with more mockery.
Which gives us some really fantastic practical advice for today, especially when we do need to offer criticism. If you have to deliver some hard truth to a coworker, family member, friends of sources, give 2 clear steps. Steps to make sure you're being a careful, compassionate remodeler, not just swinging a wrecking ball.
Step 1 is all about your heart, your mindset. Before you say a critical word, force yourself to identify 3 things that person did well. 3 positive things about the situation you're about to address. Start by genuinely acknowledging their effort, blessing it in a way. That simple act shifts your whole attitude from punishment towards reinforcement.
And then step 2 is a self-check. 2 key questions to ask yourself to balance truth with kindness. First question, what truth do my words need grace?
So important, because truth without grace just sounds like judgment, right? It tears down. It rarely leads to actual change, just defensiveness, shame.
And the second question, what kindness or grace do my words need integrity?
And that's the flip side. Kindness without truth, without integrity, just becomes enabling, placating. It stops necessary growth. Asking both questions forces you to deliver the message, whole truth and grace. You become so untrustworthy.
So to wrap all this up, words, building, tearing down, architecture, let's end with this really powerful analogy the sources used. It's the story of a Turkish farmer, Kiraz.
Right. Kiras lived in an area that was just devastated by huge wildfires. Awful. Flames everywhere. Homes, forests, fields all just turned to ash. Kiras naturally assumed his orchard, his whole livelihood, was gone too.
But when he finally went back, he couldn't believe his eyes. His orchard was standing, untouched. This little island of green, thriving, in a sea of black, burnt wasteland. Everything around it was gone.
And the secret, he realized, wasn't magic. It was just good practice, maintenance, boundaries. His trees were properly spaced, the ground was clear, and crucially, the soil and trees were well watered, deeply irrigated. Because they were saturated with life-giving water, the trees themselves didn't catch fire, even when the searing heat and embers blew through.
It's such a perfect picture of what Nehemiah did, isn't it? He knew destructive words are like that wildfire. He chose not to fight fire with fire. Instead, he saturated himself, saturated his people with prayer like that life-giving water. And he set up healthy boundaries, the guards, to protect the fragile building project from the destructive heat.
And that's the challenge for us, isn't it? As builders of our own inner houses and contributing to the houses of those around us, what are we going to saturate ourselves with? What kind of language will we use? The good news is, God specializes in rebuilding, taking what seems totally broken Jerusalem's walls, a damaged inner life, and making it whole again.
The choice is ours, though. Every conversation, every label we use or refuse to use.
So, may you be careful, builders, not burners. May your words create those orchards of hope, bringing life-giving speech into a world that's just desperate for it.